Welcome. Today's webinar is really pretty important. It's one of those webinars where, what you learn today will, in many cases, can completely change the direction of your career. If you've been unsatisfied with your career so far, if things seem to be going wrong, or in general, if you would just like to improve. And the suggestions I'm going to talk about today in this webinar are based things that I've learned over the past 25 years of working with, probably over 10,000 people, and the mistakes that people make that end up preventing them from getting good positions or staying employed in the legal profession with law firms in particular. So I'm going to talk about that today. And I think that this is a really important topic. I would recommend when you're watching the webinar if you have any questions, because it's a live webinar, you can type those questions into the chat and I will answer them when we're done with the webinar. So we'll do the webinar, and then after the webinar, we'll take like a short break of like 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll come back and do everyone's questions today. So I would encourage you to ask questions. It's usually when people ask questions after the webinar, it can be about this topic, or it can be really about anything. That tends to help people the most that are watching the questions at the end. So I would encourage you to stay, through the webinar, of course, but then also to ask questions. And just to get started, I wanted to, everyone on this webinar, I would commend you for being on this and taking time to learn about this stuff today, because a lot of people think they kind of know everything, and they don't, mainly because they may not be familiar with, having worked with tens of thousands of people and seeing who gets jobs and who doesn't, and kind of personality traits and the work ethic and things that they do that help them advance in the legal profession. So, I get emails every week, people who watch these webinars. Sometimes they watch 50 of them, or they watch them every week for years, or sometimes people will just watch one webinar and get a lot out of it that really makes a difference in what happens. So, one of the things that, a lot of people seem to believe, and I've noticed isn't true, is that people become successful based on how smart they are. Sometimes people believe that their race can hold them back, or their social class, law schools they go to, the places that they work, and other factors. But in reality, what I've seen in my life is that that's not really the case. In fact, a lot of people that will rely on things like their intelligence, the race, or their pedigree, believe that people should, that are actually suspicious of that. So people that use these things are, others are often suspicious. And when people find that they think they should be advanced based on these sort of factors, like their intelligence or whatever their pedigree is, they actually end up getting discriminated against, and then society kind of ends up pushing them down. And I'll talk to you about how that. So a lot of discrimination comes from, against people that believe that they're owed something for whatever that is. And so what society really values is productivity. I mean, that's what people pay for, being able to get good results. They pay for a lot of work and good work. And so I'm going to talk to you today about this topic of productivity. It applies to whether or not you choose to stay practicing law, or even if you, start your own business doing as a solo practitioner, doing something else, or if you're a solo practitioner now, it can help you. But, you really need to decide when you're looking at jobs, to what extent are your, decisions going to be based on taking jobs where you're likely to be productive and, contribute to society. It's very interesting, just at this particular point in time, I've been seeing just so many resumes, people that are in government and are worried about losing their jobs, or just want to get out because of, the administration. And one of the things I hear very often from law firms in particular is that, they don't like hiring people from the government because those people have been in jobs where they discriminate against them, in effect, because they don't believe that they're productive. They don't believe that the government holds the people there up to the same work standards as they would in a private law firm. And there's also the same presumption against with law firms, attorneys that are in in-house roles, because they believe that those attorneys have gotten to roles where actually doing a lot of work may not happen, where they may actually be in a position where they're giving work to others, not as productive. So the whole law firm model is a business, and as a business, it's looking for people that can be the most productive. Now, none of this is to say that people go to government and don't work incredibly hard and do really good work, or in-house, but there is prejudice against people that don't look like they're being as productive, as possible. So, people that have overachieving personalities, meaning they do whatever they can with what they got. They're typically, I've watched a lot of attorneys succeed that have gone to the best schools and colleges and did very well there. And I've often seen a lot of people that went to really good colleges and then ended up at, lower ranked law schools, but they did very well. So maybe they didn't do well in the LSATs, who knows, but they didn't get into the best law schools. And in most cases, that's differently, when, people end up going to lower ranked law schools with really good qualifications, it's typically because they probably didn't get into the best law schools. I see that with a lot of people that were like athletes at like Harvard, Stanford, and all these other Ivy League schools. They may have been recruited to do that, and maybe not the best test takers. So, but a lot of them did well at those schools, but didn't get into good schools. And so, what I've seen about people that often went to the best colleges, and then the ones that did extremely well there but didn't get into the best law schools, is they didn't get discouraged. I was talking to a woman just I think it was like maybe Monday, that went to Yale, I think, and did really, really well there. And she ended up at Southern Methodist University Law School, despite having gone to Yale. So, but much different with her is she went to the best law firm she went to that she could get into, which was a national firm. And but she was in law school and just ranked right at the top of her class. And I see that quite often. I see like people that didn't go to the best law schools but did extremely well in college, often really good colleges, but then they come out and they get into law school and do very well. And I think the reason for that a lot of times is they're just overachieving. They're working harder than people that might be smarter than them. They're able to figure out how the game works in law school or wherever they go, even though they might not have the natural inclination to do well, these tests. And they just have these great careers, seem to do well wherever they're doing. And I think that in law firms, people like that do very well, because they work very hard and they're extremely productive, even if they don't, have the same natural aptitude that the LSAT might show. And, when you're in a law firm, most of it is not necessarily about how smart you are. I mean, you need to be keeping up with the people you're around, and you need to be able to understand things, but it's really more about like how much you give compared to the other people that you're competing with. I had something very interesting when I left this firm, Quinn Emanuel, to go to another law firm. This partner that was trying to talk me into staying came by my office, and I was complaining about how this woman that I know hadn't made partner, and she was someone that was giving me work and stuff, and I liked her. And the John, it was, I don't know, no, it wasn't John Quinn, but this partner said to me, well, she only billed 2,600 hours last year, and the person we made partner billed 3,200 hours. So it was basically the firm was saying that this person, one person worked more hours than the other and gave more. And so overachievers typically will do more work, and they will work harder, and they will figure out how to do better work and not cut corners. And they tend to do very well in whatever they're doing, whether it's practicing law or starting their own firms or whatever that is. And so for most attorneys, if you didn't do well, standardized tests or, didn't, whatever, it's not necessarily because of a lack, people that can do well, it's not, you don't have to have like the highest intelligence or the best pedigree to do well. It's all about other things. And predict, what happens a lot when most attorneys don't succeed is they don't produce enough valuable work for their clients, whether the client is a law firm or an outside client. So an outside client would be like whoever you're working for. And then the client, essentially, when you're employed by someone and paid to do work, the client is a law firm. So the law firm expects you to, do work hard, but also to produce work that is valuable and makes them look good, and it saves time for partners that are giving you work. And so, you need to really think about how much valuable work you're producing. And what happens to a lot of attorneys, especially ones a lot of times that go to average law schools, is I mean, don't go to the best law schools. Is that the best law schools? I'm sorry, attorneys who go to the best law schools. A lot of attorneys who go to the best law schools end up kind of believing that they should be paid a lot of money based on their pedigree, maybe that they don't have to work as hard, and they tend not to do well. And there's a lot of them. I mean, good percentage of attorneys that come out of top law schools and go to the best firms kind of have entitlement issues, and it ends up hurting them quite a bit. At some point, a lot of sometimes things happen that law firms will hire children of clients and as a favor, or they'll hire some attorneys from that didn't do the best at best law schools, and these people are typically people that are underachievers and don't work as hard as they possibly can, don't do as well. And underachievers are often, most often just the absolute worst type of attorneys because they're not giving 100% to whatever they're doing. They're rarely committed, and they often jump out of the race early. It's very sad, but I mean, every year I talk to several people that are at top law firms and are losing their job or have lost their job. Often they're very early in their careers, and at some point, 6 months in, a year in, or a year and a half in, someone will sit them down and say, you're not really giving it your all like your other classmates. You're not, producing as much work. You're not as committed, and you don't have as much drive to get work from partners and things, and those people will lose their jobs. And when they lose their jobs, I certainly don't stop working with them, but their resume changes in ways that are just incredible. Like they become contract attorneys in different firms, and go from these positions where they might have been making over $300,000 a year, to ones where they're making like 60 or something, and they don't understand what happened to them and why it happened. And it happened just because they didn't have that drive to do well and to impress people and to be productive. And so, firms just continue to hire these types of attorneys. A lot of times when someone like that is let go because or it has to leave for whatever reason, because of their pedigree, they'll get hired. And so firms are always bringing in these types of people, and because law firms prefer to have people like that on their bios and stuff when clients look them up, as opposed to attorneys from lower level law schools. But then those people typically will not work out at one large law firm, will leave one large law firm. Then a year later, they'll leave another firm. Maybe it's a large law firm or the mid-sized law firm. Then a year later, they'll leave that firm. So there are a lot of people whose resumes just kind of jump around. And the reason they jump around is because just a complete lack of productivity and doing work in the way that the law firms want it done, and having that type of commitment. And that commitment takes them often, they don't go as far as people from lower ranked law schools that are taking the job seriously and doing as well as they possibly can. And so, in any type of business environment, the ones that create the most value are the ones that succeed. So, if you were to look at someone starting Google, that's suddenly allowing people to find things on the web. That's a huge value, and people become billionaires. I mean, if you're looking at someone that starts Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg, then that's someone that's creating huge value, and are being compensated. Your Facebook, you're bringing together billions of people, and Google is search engine, or Tesla, Elon Musk, introducing electric cars, and with all sorts of advancements. And you can go on and on, but your success in the world, the more people you produce something of value for, the better you're going to do. And it doesn't matter what your race is, your social class, or your background. It's all about producing as much value as possible. I bring up every week that I've seen these attorneys from that came out of law school, like these horrible law schools that some of them that aren't even accredited by the ABA, and don't have a job for a year or so, but are still really trying to do whatever they can, and end up doing things like becoming personal injury lawyers. And some of these people are more successful than any partner at a major law firm, almost any partner major law firm. I mean, it's just because they're driven and they work really hard to get clients, and then they work really hard once they get the clients. And so they provide a lot of value to people that are injured or, airplane crashes, whatever. But, again, and it's like that with lawyers too. Like if a lawyer is representing one person to create value in suing, it's a lot different than if they're representing, a class of 1,000 people or something, trying to, create value for those people, and those people make even more money. So these are kind of the things that I discuss. When people are moving, I discuss, is this new firm going to allow you to be more productive or produce something that's more highly valued? And so it's very interesting when you start talking about law firms. What's going to allow you to be more productive? Well, you're going to be able to be more productive if you're able to get more hours. Like getting into a firm where there's a lot of work, it's going to enable you to be more productive. And if you're being more productive and getting more hours, you're adding value. You're adding more value than you might at a firm that doesn't have enough work to give you, which is one of the most common reasons for attorneys moving, is they don't have enough work. It's almost like often the number one reason. So because the firm doesn't provide the platform where they can be productive, and they know if they're not billing hours, then they can risk being let go. So that's one sign of productivity. Like, does the firm have enough work, or are you likely to have work? Like if you become a 10th year associate there, is the firm going to let you go, or did they keep people there so they continually be productive? And then also the consideration. I hope you're taking notes because that's really important. Another consideration of productivity is, what type of clients are you working for? So it's if you're doing, some practice area like maybe insurance defense, which is a great practice area, but it's limited in its productivity. You're representing people that for insurance company, you're representing insurance companies that are being sued, maybe for one of their clients' auto accidents, and that's one form of productivity. But the fees are low, and the insurance companies are paying. But if you go to a firm where you're maybe doing commercial litigation, and the clients are companies that are paying a lot more money by the hour, that's another that's another level of productivity that's higher. So working for bigger clients essentially makes you more productive because you're billing out for more hours. And you just always need to consider, like, what is making me more productive? Like, where can I be the most productive where I'm working? Sometimes people will want to leave small markets where they may not get enough work in their practice area, and that's a form of productivity. Or they may want to go to smaller firms with more work and than they have, or whatever, and that's a form of productivity. So everyone should be considering how productive they're likely to be, no matter where wherever they're going. How many hours can I get, or what are the size clients I can get? All about productivity. Am I going to be able to sustain my career doing at this place, or whatever? That's productivity. So, again, an example would be, these Google founders, Brin, whatever. What if they're taking jobs inside of a company after getting their PhDs? That would have, they might have settled down and made some money and done what was asked of them, but that would have not allowed them to make the best use of their skills or to make the best contribution to society. So that's a form of lower productivity. And so what they did, obviously, made a better contribution and was more productive because more people were touched. And so, you always need to make decisions in your career on, what's going to give you the most productivity with the skills that you have and your interest. And the more productivity you have, the more work you have, the higher you're able to bill, or the more upside you have, or the more people you're able to touch and benefit, the more productive you're going to be. So when you think about switching law firms or quitting the practice of law or working at your current firm, you always need to decide, is that going to enable you to make the largest contribution to society, which means people paying you for your work, paying you the most money for your work, and having the ability to work over a long period of time doing something. So every decision you make needs to be really based around how productive you can be and what is the extent of your contribution. And the more contribution, the more you'll benefit. So one of the things, just real quick thing about schools, what they do for the most part, it's just kind of this exercise that starts when people are very young, 5 years old, or maybe six. They start sifting through people that are underachievers from those that are overachievers. So, high performance students in middle school and high school and college and so forth, they show more strength of being overachievers than maybe underachievers. And so, what does that do? It shows your ability to follow instructions, to give people what they want, to discipline yourself to work outside of class. And then, if you're trying to, go to a private high school, they're going to be interested in your sports and things and how you're achieving there. And if you're trying to go to good college, that's going to be, they're going to look at your contribution as well. So for example, I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, Grosse Pointe, and I was a very good elementary school student. I did very well there, but by middle school, I started, going and having friends that were acting out, the most trouble-prone kids, and I decided to start having fun, and that became much more important to me than grades or doing well in school. And I was actually at a private school in eighth grade, and by the end of the year, they basically told me that I couldn't go to their private high school, and that's it was not good for me, and it was a crushing blow, but it was the right thing for the school to do. I mean, I wasn't being productive. I wasn't earning the type of grades and working as hard. And they felt that it was not a good use of their resources to put someone like me in a school where I wasn't likely to do well and probably drag down people around me. And this is what private schools do all over the country. There's always people that don't do well there or make trouble, and the best ones will push them out, and that's what they do. And so my daughter, this is one daughter is in third grade at a competitive school outside of Los Angeles, and even that school in third grade doesn't ask people back. I mean, they're just they're very good about pushing people out that aren't doing good. And so productivity, like in a school standpoint, and I'm going to tie this into law firms in a minute, but it means following the rules, doing the best work, making the institution, in your success, the focus of your life, and that's a form of productivity. And one of the reasons schools filter those people out is they want just people to be surrounded by other motivated high achievers, because those students are going to raise the others up. And when in reality, kind of what happens with the most competitive schools is they're just trying to bring in people that are providing the most value, meaning getting into the best schools or being the best athletes that are going to make the school look good. And that's a form of productivity. And surrounding yourself with very motivated high achievers is really the point of going to the best schools. Best schools don't really teach anything different. They're just sifting people out and putting high achievers there. And students want their kids in private schools, want their kids to go to the best colleges possible. That makes the school look good. And if those students are able to get into good schools, that's going to attract more good students. And the more selective any school can be, the more successful it is. And so getting good grades, getting into good schools is a form of adding productivity to a school and raising the other students up. And and if the school is selective enough, the students will go on to do great things. I mean, there's all these well-known private schools all over the country, like Harvard Westlake and Los Angeles, that just has all these famous people and things that have gone to there, or Phillips Exeter, Andover, in different schools like Collegiate, New York for boys. I mean, there's all these schools where they've got a history of just really, really doing well. And when I was kicked out of the school in eighth grade, I became very upset, and I started prioritizing my academics over fun. And that actually got my life back on track. I redesigned my life, and I did everything the school asked me for, and I excelled, and did extra things, and by pursuing my personal interest, I did well. And I realized what was important and not important, and ended up doing very well. And now that I'm older, I understand that the best schools and when you surround yourself with the best people, this is what is enforced. So society wants everyone to be productive, follow the rules, and do very well. At the expense of maybe doing what you want. It's interesting, because what happens in law firms is you have these people that have often large law firms that have like followed the rules forever and always excelled, and always impress teachers and things. And then they get into a private law firm, and all of a sudden, like, they start doing the things that like the bad kids would have done at school and not gotten good grades, meaning they start gossiping about how much they dislike the firm or partners. They may, not commit to the level they may have in school, and then they stop doing well. So you can become like a non-productive person at any stage of your life and career. And the people that I knew from middle school, for example, that weren't doing well. I mean, they was just crazy. I mean, it was, they dropped out of school. Like, one guy hit someone with a bat because it was some sort of road rage incident. Went to prison. I mean, this is what happens when people are kind of breaking the rules and not being productive. They just don't have good lives. And I've seen, two of my fraternity brothers in college, and I was in a pretty small fraternity, like, 20 people that where I lived in my house. I mean, were just drank and didn't have fun, didn't, contribute, got bad grades, had all these problems in college, and they just were non-productive, and for whatever reason, and ended up killing themselves because I don't know why exactly, but I think that their lives would have been much different if they were able to, do a good job in college and take that seriously. And they were able to get there because of good grades. I went to University of Chicago and how smart they were, but it just doesn't matter over the long run. And so people that emphasize personal interest over the interest of society, being productive, typically don't do well by whatever measures there are. I mean, you can certainly not work in a law firm and be productive doing something else, but in order to be successful, whatever you're trying to do needs to somehow be interesting and productive to society. I mean, whether or not you're like a billionaire, like different Kardashians that are selling cosmetics to millions of people and different things, or you're an attorney, you have to be productive. And the thing to remember is that any action you take that's non-productive, meaning it's not adding some sort of value to society that's important, it is not going to result in success. It's going to result in something else. There's all sorts of majors in college and things that don't necessarily always lead to productivity, and that's another thing as well. So, the most successful attorneys I know, and this is what I would like you to be, and I want to try to teach you the most important things about being successful in law firms, and what I've seen from working with tens of thousands of people, is what happens is, when people have problems in their careers, for whatever reason, they stop being productive. They put themselves in situations where they can't be productive. They've not just, they've not read the messages when they can't be productive in a law firm, or they were productive in a law firm, meaning they weren't doing what the law firm wanted, whether it's working in an office as opposed to remotely, billing enough hours, doing the work as well as possible. And so they stop being productive. I have a lot of things that I advise people about how to constantly be productive. One of the most dangerous things that people do is they will often go in house. And when you go in house, it's very difficult to remain productive because you're a cost center, and often if companies cutting back, they will let people go that are not producing direct revenue, which often attorneys companies don't, or they will go out of business, or they will, have a new CEO comes in that wants their own legal department. So it's very risky continue to be productive in an in-house job. Some people do extraordinarily well. I mean, I'm talking about, getting walking away with $100 million, but the vast majority don't, and and so that's very dangerous. People that go in house will often bump around between jobs and have long periods of unemployment. People in smaller markets will often, have longer careers practicing because they're in markets where there's not a lot of people to do the work. And so they can always be productive, whereas people in larger markets may have issues with that. So, I speak with attorneys every day that want things like, a less demanding in-house job, which risk your productivity. Sometimes they want to go to a boutique law firm that may or may not be stable, but will often, they think, offer less hours. Sometimes they want to work in places where they have a flexible schedule, which you certainly can do if you have good enough qualifications. But that's a sign of not wanting to be productive. And law firms typically prefer people that don't want, a flexible schedule. Sometimes people will want things like, the ability to work remotely, or, take Fridays off or something, or, all these different things, which are signs that someone doesn't want to be productive according to the firm's needs. And I see crazy things all the time. I see people actually get and accept offers and then ask questions about whether or not they can work remotely 1 or 2 days a week. I had a guy that had an offer for, it was at least $500,000 that he accepted, and after accepting the offer, he asked them if he could work remotely sometimes because it was an hour and a half each way, and they just took away the offer. So they didn't like that, and that for them was a sign of not playing by the rules and being productive, just as it would be in school if you asked a teacher if you could, not take the final exam. I mean, it would just, different things are signs of not being productive. And so, any statements that you ever convey to law firms about that you want to stop trying as hard as you can and stop playing the game and being as productive as possible are not looked at favorably. They just will. This is one of the main reasons that people get rejected when they interview with law firms. I mean, the typical person will go out on 1 to 10 interviews and get an offer. And most of the time, what they're doing is they're asking questions, or they're coming across as someone that is going to prioritize their personal interest to some extent more than the law firm is comfortable with. And so they'll ask questions about remote work. They'll sometimes they'll want reduced hours positions. Sometimes but that's what law firms are always looking for. They're looking for how productive are you? And then when they're interviewing partners, typically the thing that they're most concerned about is how much business the attorney has. And that's a sign of being productive. So everything you do in your career needs to look like you're trying to be as productive as possible. So as a associate or junior level attorney, they expect high productivity and hours and doing good work. And as a partner, their sign of productivity is how much business you have. And so, there's nothing wrong with not wanting to be the number one player or work as hard as possible. I mean, these are things that people need, but they're also going to limit you. And so people will, often decide that the productivity demanded of them in law firms or wherever they are is not what they want or what is being asked of them. And, their calculation often, especially in large firms, is just to completely drop out of that and quit. This week, I've seen, so many resumes from people that are coming from this, the Trump, the Biden administration, and worried about the Trump administration because of these, things with uh, this dog, this thing that they're starting to eliminate inefficient positions in government. They've already started doing that, and they're targeting people that are basically not productive for the government. That's the same thing that Elon Musk did when he bought Twitter. I think he fired 80% of the staff, included that those were people in positions that weren't productive, and it didn't affect the operation of the company at all. Lots of companies have been letting go middle management people, which are essentially there's orders that come from the CEO and high executives to the mid-level people, and then the mid-level people give it to lower-level people. And so they've decided, I think Procter and Gamble is eliminating 10% of its workforce to eliminate people that don't look unproductive. So this is what's going on. Companies, law firms, all sorts of employers are always looking for people that are non-productive. And when they find those people, they let them go. And it's just, how the system works. And so, a lot of people, stop trying to be productive. Like I said earlier, like, kids in my daughter's school, or, people in middle school, they stop, or, sometimes people stop in high school and give up. And I'm sure you can remember from, just people that you knew in high school that just kind of gave up, or people that you knew in middle school. But there's people that always will give up, and they will be the bad students and the troublemakers and things. And they've given up doing everything that they can to be productive. And the most productive people, of course, are the ones that go to the best schools, when they go to college. And, so people will stop being productive in college. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, when I went to University of Chicago, I knew all of these people that just gave up. They gave up very, very quickly. And others will do the same thing in law school. Like, they'll become the people that don't take it seriously and aren't trying hard anymore. And then many people stop being productive when they're first year attorneys or second year attorneys. And I'm sure you've encountered people like that as well. They just stop doing what's asked of them, or taking it seriously, and then their careers end. And other people will stop being productive when they're partners in law firms. So law firms you can go all through all of this. You can go through elementary school, middle school, college, law school, and in your first job and doing very well, and become a partner, like an income partner in a law firm, but then you never get business. And so that's a sign of productivity. And then you get let go, or just, pegged in a certain position where you're not able to be as productive. And when you, stop being productive, it typically, has, when people stop trying to do this, it often has very little to do with their ability to succeed. I certainly, had the ability to succeed when I was in middle school. My mother was hospitalized, and I had some people taking care of me, and I probably wanted attention. I wasn't getting it home, so I acted out to get attention. And the same thing happened to kids in my daughter's school who's going through a divorce. So you may stop trying for different reasons. They're often psychological, but the idea is that you're constantly being tested by the institutions that you join to see if you're being productive. And a business that doesn't generate enough revenue is not being as productive as possible. That's a sign of productivity. It's very interesting in New York. Like, if you spend enough time there and walk down the street, And it's like this in all markets where there's expensive real estate and so forth. But if you walk down the street in New York, when I used to live there, I would walk down the street and constantly see, like, sometimes every 6 months, like a restaurant just opening and closing, and then a new restaurant coming in. And why does that happen? It generally happens because the whatever it takes to generate enough revenue to pay the rent isn't being done. The business isn't as productive as it possibly could, and so it goes out of business. So all around you, there's signs of lack of productivity wherever you are. And so you're always are being tested for your productivity. And it's partners, associates, everybody often doesn't like the fact that they're being measured for their productivity constantly, and they want to escape it. And so often will go in house, and they'll put themselves in a competition in environments and law firms that are attempting to make them most productive. Like, you don't go to a law firm like Skadden, where there's tons of partners making over $10 million a year, and get away with not being productive, because everyone around you is expected to be productive to generate high profits. And anytime you look at one of those law firms where the partners are making a lot of money, they're going to expect like extreme productivity out of their associates and also their partners. And if you don't do that, then you will lose your job. So for some people, that pressure, of course, I mean, most people, is not worth it, but you still need to find a place where you can be productive. And, those who, don't give up with that are typically the ones that succeed, and they're often not from the most privileged backgrounds. They just don't quit, and they continue doing whatever they can to give a lot of value to their employer and figure out how to do it, and they stick around. And one thing that was interesting to me, I was at this law firm, Dewey Ballantyne, which was Los Angeles office of New York law firm. It went out of business, but I mean, it used to be considered one of the probably 20 most prestigious law firms in the country. And they, I was at a cocktail party, and this senior associate or mid-level associate was joking around with a partner that, you've had this office here for 20 years and no one's ever made partner. And he said, well, that's because everybody leaves. Like, if they stuck around, they would make partner, which is very interesting. So people went to that firm and just gave up, and didn't stick it out. And if they'd stuck around, probably a ton of them, or not a ton, but there would have been people that became partners. So when you're looking for a job, this is again another very important part of the presentation. But when motivated attorneys are looking for jobs, they also are often attempting to put themselves in positions where they're able to be productive and create wealth. And by creating wealth, they will make money as well. And they want to go to prestigious firms, or maybe a company where they could be very successful that's doing well, which is a sign of productivity. But they want to try to do that and put themselves in those situations where they could be productive. And those sorts of people are trying to put themselves in a place where they can be productive. And large law firms and successful companies are really, not any different than colleges. They will admit people to them based on the prospect of them being productive, and not to go into schools too much anymore, because I don't want to talk too much about it. But what are law firms looking for when you're early in your career and they're looking at your grades? They're looking at people that are most likely to be productive. And and then when employers are looking at you from law schools, they're looking for people that are most likely to be productive, which would be having the highest grades if you didn't go to one of the top law schools, or just having a history of just incredible academic achievement if you went to good schools, or law schools, because that's a sign of productivity. By getting into a good law school, you have to get good grades. And so the key to success is really just about how productive you can be. And that's what law firms are looking for. Like, when they look at your resume, they're looking for, how productive do you look like you can be? So they'll look at your schools, they'll look, the quality of firm you got in, they'll look at your employment stability. So someone that bumps around between firms is probably not that productive if they do it too much, because when people start looking for jobs, they become less productive. And when they leave, that hurts the firm, because the firm's losing the ability to do work. So they want people that are going to look like they're going to stick around and be productive. So employment stability is very important. And if you're someone that tends to bounce around between firms, that will hurt you. Or if you've lost a job and you're unemployed, many times law firms will conclude that you're not going to do well because you wouldn't have been let go if you weren't productive, or if you left for your own personal reasons. That productivity, they don't know, but you're not being productive and not working. And so the more productive it looks like you're going to be, the more likely you're going to be hired, is basically how it works. And so some clues that look like you're going to be productive that law firms will look at when they're evaluating your resume to work there are going to be, if you've only had law firm jobs, are places that measure your productivity by hours billed and by the ability to stay employed there by doing good work. They don't want to see outside interests that consume your time outside of work. When I was a third-year attorney, I got a job as an adjunct professor in a law school, teaching there. And I would teach class once or twice a week that was 90 minutes long. And I had to commute an hour each way to the class. And I remember I was interviewing with a large New York law firm. I think it was Simpson Thacher, when I was considering leaving that firm. And they were like, why would you be a law professor? And I thought it was something that was good for my pedigree in the law school, but they said that's just not something you should be continuing doing. It's not good. And that's a sign that someone is not trying to be as productive for their employer as they could be. And I talked earlier about moves. I talked about not having extended periods of unemployment, because any time you have, an unemployment gap on your resume, people will think that you are not being non-productive, and also, that you probably weren't productive in your current firm. Now, that said, I place people every month that are unemployed and have been unemployed for a long time. So it's not things that you can't overcome. But in general, when someone's comparing you to someone that may have been employed versus someone that's not unemployed, the person that's been employed obviously looks better because they're constantly productive. And then obviously the more competitive and demanding law firms you work with, and the longer you do, the more likely you're to be productive. Firms in larger cities are more competitive and require more productivity and you to work harder than often in smaller markets for a variety of reasons. And the same thing with large law firms that need to pay their partners millions of dollars a year. And then just having like an historical pattern of achievement is really good as well. There's law firms that really love college athletes, and they will always hire them, or people that, were Eagle Scouts, or people that, were Green Berets, or, Navy SEALs and things like those sorts of people are very employable. I had something interesting happen. I had a woman that was a Olympic athlete in rowing, and she was working at a small firm in Ohio, and she was working there. I don't know why she was working there, but she'd been in the Olympics as a rower. And I sent her to firms in, I believe it was Seattle, where she was from. And, typically when I'll introduce someone to a law firm, for a variety of reasons, the majority of those firms, are not going to be interested in the person because they're getting other applicants and all sorts of things are happening, or they may not even have a lot of work. But with this woman, it was interesting. I sent her to, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 firms in Seattle, and almost every single one of them interviewed her. It was very interesting, just because I think that they liked that was a sign of someone that was going to achieve. And, so law firms are just looking for that. And productivity means different things at different points in time. And I told you earlier that associates, it's about how hard you're going to work. And if it looks like you're being productive on your resume, and then, partners, it's all about business. And so the biggest mistake you can often make is when you put yourself in a position where you stop being productive and then not contributing much of anything. One of my friends right now is going through a divorce, and he was a partner at a major law firm, and but a really good law firm, and he was making, I don't know, 5, 6 million, $7 million a year, and he quit when he was 45. He just decided that that this was too much for him. He had a decent amount of money in the bank, and now he's, in his close to his late 50s. He's out of money. He got bored when he wasn't working, started drinking too much, and now he, his wife's divorcing him because there's no money, and it's just sits around the house all the time. And so, that's a situation where someone decided to stop being productive, and because of that, he, basically is, he it's not a good situation. He needs to get another job, but no one is interested in hiring him because he's been out of work for so long, over 10 years. And so that's a sign of non-productivity, and he needs to work, but he's not ever probably going to get hired at anywhere near what he was ever at. So again, the more you contribute, the better you're going to do, and the more you're going to get rewarded. And what I tell people when they're trying to leave a given employer or stay there is, are you going to be able to be more or less productive in your next employer? And so people will often be in very good positions where there's constant work, where they could potentially be elevated if they stuck around to being a partner, or they're a partner at a firm and they're getting tons of work and they're in a secure position. Are they going to go to a situation where they're going to become uh, potentially more or less productive? So maybe they're going to go to interested in a firm that's not as stable, or maybe they're going to go to a firm that doesn't have as much work, or maybe they're going to go to a firm that requires them to bring in work, or maybe they're going to go to a firm that's working for smaller clients that may not enable them to have the same kind of career they would have if they worked for a firm with larger clients. Why does that matter? Because larger clients will write checks for legal matters and without a lot of thought, because they have plenty of money, and smaller clients won't. So that's and you have to charge them less, and you have to work on more smaller clients, and so often that's not as productive. So these are just kind of things that you need to ask about whether the work's available for you to be productive, and will you be doing the work you like? Does the firm have more work available or a better reputation? Are you going to put yourself in a position where you're likely to get clients, which is a sign of productivity? So I have conversations with partners uh, almost every day. This is like a big part of my business. I just talk to them every day, and I talk to firms that are trying to merge into other firms constantly. And but a lot of a lot of what partners are looking for when they're leaving firms, they may be at a major law firm, but the size clients they're trying to bring in aren't interesting to the law firm, and so they have to continually rely and work for others, and they're in a situation where they can't bring in clients. And usually it's because the billing rates they're charging at the large law firms are way out of line with what would be charged at middle market firms. And so they will often move from, major firms like White and Case and, whatever, like the biggest firms, they'll move to like middle market firms, but those middle market firms will allow them to bring in those clients. And so they will end up being more productive and having their own clients than if they were to stick around at these major firms. And so when you move jobs, often people will decide how to, do something different because they don't want to be as productive. They often will go in house. They will often go in house, and the company's not productive in providing value to society. It could be a startup and it goes out of business, and that's a sign of losing productivity. They may join smaller firms, and that will make them unproductive. They may do something outside the law where their skills may not be as highly valued, or where their productivity is unproven. So one of the most common things is, it's just kind of funny, but attorneys will take jobs just doing different things that have nothing to do with the law and what they're experienced with, and the productivity is unproven, and they won't do well, or they will, never be able to attract clients, and therefore not be productive as according to the rules of the legal profession. So everything that you do in your career needs to be looked at through the lens of, is this going to allow me to be more or less productive? Because the more productive you are, in terms of the more value you're adding, the better off you're going to be. And people will make these, catastrophic mistakes when they look at firms, and they'll often say, they want to go to places where they don't have to be as productive, which many people do. Every week, I would say I talk to at least once a day someone at an Am Law 100 law firm that is been there for 1 to 5 years, and they're telling me that they want to get some sort of remote attorney job, or some sort of job where they don't need to come into the office, some sort of job where they don't need to work as many hours. And what they're saying is, I want to be less productive. And there are firms that will hire people like that. So it's not unheard of, but it certainly makes it a lot harder, because obviously any law firm, if you were a law firm, would want to hire the most productive person. And so people to put themselves into situations where they're not being productive enough, and not giving society everything that they're capable of giving, are not going to be usually in the best financial situation they could be in. Or if their skills aren't as valued with whatever they're doing, they're not going to be compensated as well, or not going to have the careers that they're capable of. And so it's just interesting, because you take the most productive people, and I would say that most people that graduate from law school and pass the bar are capable of being very productive, regardless of their backgrounds, but they don't ever put themselves in these situations where productivity is valued. So you just have to look at your entire career through this lens of what's going to be able to make you the most productive in your job. I started this profession of what I do now because I believed it would make me much more productive than I would have been in a law firm, because I understood this better. I just naturally, I don't know why, but I understood this profession naturally. I knew that I would have the position to train all sorts of recruiters and expand the company, and that productivity would lead to a corresponding increase in my income, and people knowing who I was, and doing well. I felt that I would do that better than in a law firm. And so, so I put myself in a position where I felt like I could be more productive than less productive. But people will often put themselves in positions where they're less productive. There's a saying that a lot of people make. They make it against people from certain political parties, and they'll make it against different bureaucrats. Is like one of the games that people play, is they put themselves in positions where their productivity isn't being managed or measured in any way, and so they try to go into jobs and careers where that's something that's where they don't have to be productive. And so that could be all sorts of government positions and things like that. So we'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, we will do questions. And so just over the next 1 or 2 minutes, if you could think of any questions and ask them, then I will answer them when I come back. So thank you for being on this webinar so far. All right, so we will go to questions. Just give me 1 second. And I always say this, that I love questions each week, because I think that what I love hearing is people trying to learn. And honestly, like, listening to this kind of stuff is just like so helpful, because most people don't think about this stuff, and because they don't think about it, they're kind of always they never get to where they could be. Okay, so let's go to these questions. Give me 1 second. And so even just just considering, like, what's going on around you, like, I'm trying to be productive by doing this, because I can do this presentation, and then after the presentation I can show it to more people, and I can touch more people on this call than I would be if I was just doing a private call. So that's a level of productivity. So just trying to increase my productivity by doing certain things like this is an example of things that you could do. So things that you can do to be productive are examples would be writing papers about things in your practice area, or meeting a client that could give you all sorts of work. Those are examples of increasing your productivity. If you write an article about your practice area, it's always going to be on the web somewhere, and people are going to read it, and that's productivity. If you give presentations or get a client, that's an example of productivity. If you're trying to advance in your firm, billing a lot of hours is an example of productivity. I remember, I tell the story a lot, but there are people that are associates inside of law firms that will, they'll go out and they'll bill a couple thousand hours a year. But in addition to that, they'll go out and they'll spend, they'll budget in 2,000 hours a year for client development related activities so they can have more clients and be more productive. So, those are things. Okay, how do I stay motivated in my legal job search when my peers are advancing their careers? It's difficult to keep trying when I see former classmates making partner or getting high profile roles while I'm still searching for the right opportunity. Are there mindset shifts or strategies that successful attorneys use to stay focused on their own path while feeling discouraged by their other success? Yeah, I mean, there's this whole thing where, people go to, top colleges, for example, like Harvard or Yale or whatever, and Princeton and things, and then they get out and their careers just like fizzle, and and then they see their classmates becoming Secretary of State, billionaires and things, and they're just very, very discouraged by that and aren't happy. So so your productivity. So usually when this sort of thing happens, in your career, I mean, typically it's a sign that for whatever reason, you're not producing enough value. You're not producing enough value to get to where other people are, that you would like to, where you would like to be. So the first thing is comparing yourself to other people is typically, when you go to a good school, you're around good people that do successful. That's what schools are doing. They're putting they admit the people that are most likely to be productive, and you kind of often are supposed to rise to their level. And that's why a lot of famous people come out of certain schools, because everyone sets really high bars for themselves. So it's good that you're doing that and you're, trying to do that. One thing I would tell you about is, most people that go to law school start practicing around the time they're 25, and they practice for, many for 50 plus years. And so it's not to say that, wherever you are at this point in your career, that's written in stone, because it honestly isn't. I mean, what's holding you back is, productivity, and you're saying you're searching for the right opportunity and you're not being able to get a job. And anybody in the legal profession, if you passed bar, you can get a job. I mean, there's absolutely no question that anyone that passes the bar and can get a job, because in every city and most cities, small cities, there might be 100 law firms, and middle-sized cities, there might be 500, and large cities, there might be 5,000. So there's always places that you can work. So what do? There's a lot of things you can do. One is to just conduct an aggressive search, where you're identifying places to apply to. Let me just do this example real quickly. I do it on almost every call, but I'll just do this example right now, because it may be helpful for you if you haven't seen this before. People say, how do I find a job? Like, why aren't I finding a job? So I'll just, you have a list of cities in where just pick a random state, Texas, list of cities in Texas. So you're admitted to the bar in Texas, and you're wondering why can't I get a job? Well, look at all these different cities that have attorneys in them. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing how many cities there are in Texas. And if you look at the size of the cities in Texas, there's going to be different size cities. This is the first I've ever heard of the city, Georgetown, Texas. So let's take a look at Georgetown, Texas. If you look at Georgetown, Texas, and you look for, and again, I've never even heard of this city. You might say, an example, let's say Trusting the States attorneys in Georgetown, Texas. And it's not even that big of a market. But you're going to see these people in Georgetown, Texas, that practice trust in the states. There's just tons of them. And that's just Georgetown. So if you were a trust in the states attorney and you wanted to get a job, it really wouldn't be that difficult to do so. You would just have to, try to contact these different people let me just see what I'm doing wrong here. Something wrong. You would have to contact these different people in Texas that do that type of work. So you go here and you can look on Google, and again, there's several pages of these people. They just kind of keep going on, and it's not that hard to find them. And then you got all these firms here too. that do that kind of work. So there's all these, list of trust in the states people. And again, this is just Georgetown, and there are hundreds of, I mean, maybe 1,000 plus uh, places you can work in Georgetown, Texas. And all you would do if you wanted to get a job with this guy is at this firm, and this is one of probably a high number of law firms, and the state is you would just basically get their email and send them, and say you're interested in doing trust and estates work. So I just want everyone to see this example because it's very powerful. Whatever state you're in, and there's going to be an incredible number of cities where you can find places to work, and the lower down you go, the fewer attorneys there's going to be, and the more opportunities you're going to have to be productive. So you can always find a job. The dumbest thing, I mean, if you were to look at this list and search trust and estates attorneys in Texas, it's going to be thousands. And there's always going to be people in probably, almost every one of these cities that would do trust and estates work. And if it was corporate work, you could do the same thing. Especially any firm above 100,000 people or below is going to have lots of corporate attorneys. So there's always work. I mean, that's a mistake that people make. And it's so sad because people will spend their time searching on Indeed and LinkedIn and other places for jobs and wonder why am I not getting jobs? And it can be very demotivating when you believe that you're unable to get a job, but you're just not doing your search right. All you need to do is apply to more employers and different markets, and so you'll always find an opportunity. Now you're saying you're searching for the right opportunity. The right opportunity is going to be something, hopefully, that's in one practice area that you can do, and where it's going to train you to do something that you can market to other firms later on. And people all the time that I work with start out with very small firms, sometimes like 5 people, and they end up at the largest law firms in the world just by making a series of calculated moves and getting experience in a practice area and all that sort of thing. So anybody that you're around, I don't care who you are, that's succeeding at a very high level is generally doing it because they've been able to find, they've been able to be productive somewhere. Productivity can mean different things. So if you're a trust and estates attorney and, you went to a firm in Texas, what if you were to start some sort of app that helped people do their own trust and estates work? And then you did that in Texas, and then you made the app for Arizona, and you made it for Louisiana. I mean, that would be more productivity. So that's like an example of a mindset shift, doing something where you feel like you can be the most productive. Now, productivity can be different for different people. So maybe you are a budding novelist and you think you could write really good books that would make people would read, and you would make money. Maybe you feel that working in a law school teaching something would be productivity. Maybe you could start your own company doing something that you're interested in. That would be an example of productivity. So the idea is that you need to put yourself in a place where you can add the most value to an employer, to society, and that's what you need to do. And then you also really can't worry about what other people are doing. If you're doing something that you're skilled at or you enjoy, you will do well. And I see some of the, and I don't know, I'm not trying to offend anybody on this call, but I see people all the time that do things like go into to work as contract attorneys despite the fact that they have a law degree, or they'll go to work as paralegals despite the fact they have a law degree. And no one that passes the bar needs to do that. You just need to find an employer that's going to allow you to be more productive than doing something like that. I mean, you don't want to have to bounce around and get calls in the morning that you're needed someplace. And it's just doesn't make sense. So you just need to put yourself in a position where you can do the best. There's all sorts of practice areas like personal injury and trust in estates and immigration and different things where you can do well. And in some cases, like if you're in the legal profession, you keep getting rejected, even though you're trying the search strategies I'm talking to you about, even though you're doing all these things right, you certainly can get a position, but you may not enjoy practicing law. There are people that don't even pass the bar and become very successful. I remember there's this a pizza chain in California called Shakey's that was started by some guys that couldn't pass the bar. And there's people, all over the country that didn't pass the bar or never practiced law and became extremely successful doing things other than practicing law. I mean, just think about like Peter Thiel went to Stanford, or what's his name? I'm blanking. Or J.D. Vance, who went to Yale, or Barack Obama, who went to Harvard. I mean, all these people, or Bill Clinton, who went to Yale. None of these people ever practiced law. So practicing law isn't the only thing you can do with a law degree. You can start businesses, and you can become a banker, and you can do all these different things. But those people all put themselves into positions where they could be more productive in the long run. So that's just something to think about. Is like it doesn't have to be in a law firm, and sometimes you just may not have the aptitude or interest to practice law, in which case you shouldn't be. And if you don't have the aptitude and you really believe that, then you should probably think about putting yourself in a position where you're going to be happy. For some people, like a typical Yale Law School graduate will go out and they will put themselves, I mean, it's actually very interesting. They will put themselves in positions where productivity can't be managed. Like they will be a policy analyst, or they will work in some nonprofit, or whatever. I mean, this is what the majority of them do. And those positions they believe are more productive in terms of adding value to society and touching more people. And then they often go into government and under that belief than someone that's just working in a law firm billing hours. So they put themselves in that position. But these are also positions where you can't necessarily measure productivity, but at the same time, they believe they're making a bigger impact, which is one reason why the smartest minds often go into positions where they believe that they can make more of a contribution to society in the long run. Okay, let's see here. And that was a great question. So thank you for whoever asked it. What are some productivity pitfalls when looking for a new job, and how can I avoid them? Well, the productivity pitfalls there's several of them. One of them is, lack of consistent work. One of them is up or out, meaning you have to develop business by, which is most large law firms, business by a certain year, where you have to leave. Those are some of the bigger ones, and then often working on smaller clients, with limited budgets. Those are things. Anything that anything that potentially anything that limits your long-term access to work is something that is going to hurt you in the long run. So you always want to be in a position where you're going to have work. And honestly, the most important thing is for any career, for any legal career, to have access to work. So, you always want to be someplace where you're getting work and being able to be productive, because if you don't have work, then you're not productive. So it's for that reason that a lot of times, senior associates in big law firms will, rather than trying to develop business and do things that they believe are impossible, will leave to go in-house, because that gives them access to work. Or people will leave firms where the work is slow, and that gives them access to work. Or people will do all these things, apply to a lot of jobs so they have access to work. I mean, most people, by the way, should be always looking at the job market. You should be checking websites, Indeed and LinkedIn, and I have a site, Law Crossing, that goes to employer websites and finds jobs that aren't advertised. So that'll show you jobs. But you should always be looking at job sites and getting job alerts, talking to recruiters. I don't care who the recruiter is. I mean, if they have something that you may not know about, they can give you access to work, and that's very important. So, you always want to do whatever you can to have access to work. And so, when you don't have access to work, you can't be productive. And when you can't be productive, your career just kind of ends, and you don't want to be in that situation. So, the other thing is to question too is this is just kind of an aside question, but sometimes in interviews you can ask, am I replacing someone? You can ask associates that, or preferably, or partners. And if you're replacing someone, you can ask questions like, well, what typically happens to people that leave here? And sometimes people will kind of not give you a good answer. And that means that that's probably a pretty dangerous place to work. And then the other thing with productivity is, when you're interviewing with a place, one of the most important things is that you have some sort of connection or some sort of affinity, or you think that the people that you're interviewing with are going to be nice to you, and that they're your kind of people. Like, is it the right culture for me? So cultures are very important because law firms will hire people just to have bodies, and they'll hire people often with the best backgrounds or whatever, or sometimes they're just in a hurry to hire and will hire people. But if you don't click with whoever you're going to be working for or the culture of the law firm, then you're typically going to be in trouble. But if you click with the people you're going to be working for, then those are people that are likely to help you and that you'll have a connection with. But if there's no connection, then that's pretty scary because those people aren't they didn't connect, or the people there aren't like you. So people should share your interest. I talk to law firms, mainly smaller law firms, all the time that will say things like, we want people only from this political party or whatever, and sometimes they'll make remarks about the type of people that are there, and those things could be along the lines of saying everyone's married or it's all a bunch of single guys. I mean, they'll say things like that, or all of us are this religion, or they'll say things like that. And so going to a firm where there's people like you is pretty important. So I hope that answers your. Okay, if law firms unconsciously adopt the same sorting mechanisms as law schools, how can attorneys who are naturally talented but historically underestimated position themselves as valuable hires? So the biggest thing that you can do when you interview with a law firm is to look like you're just very, very enthusiastic about working there, and your ability to look enthusiastic like that is going to help you. So I will show you real quickly if I can find it. I got it. Nice job, Harrison. So when I work with candidates personally, and I will try to send this to everyone who was smart enough to be on this call today. Just give me 1 second. Let me do this. Just one second and change to this just so it looks a little better. Okay, so let me share this and I'll show you. And this is actually very helpful because this is an example, and I'll provide it to everyone of what so every day, like when I talk to candidates before they have an interview, this is something I send to them, and this is something that I go over with them. Kind of the first thing is, when any law firm that interviews you really wants to hire you, and if you do things right, you have a very good chance of getting hired. I will, when you read this, there's an article here, a message to Garcia in your career, and essentially what that article goes into detail about is how certain people will always get things done, work hard, and and do a good job. But these are kind of the questions that any law firm is asking. This stuff is Zoom fundamentals you can read. It's not doesn't require a lot of going into things. But the first one they're asking is like, can you do the job? Which means if a law firm's interviewing you, they just want to know whether or not you can do the work. Almost all the time, they will think you can do the work if you have if you have that something about that on your resume, or if you get in there, doing the job means a lot of different things to them. It means maybe being flexible, and I'll talk about that are manageable, but doing the job is pretty much something that the law firms already know when they interview you. So, but the job may be doing M&A. So if you go in and you say, I want to do M&A and securities, that's not the job. So law firms will want to know, know that. Most of the time, when you get into interviews, most of them don't really ask a lot of technical questions about your experience because it's on your resume. So most law firms believe you can do the job. If you're in a litigation role, most litigators can do different types of litigation and learn it. Most real estate attorneys can do different types of real estate law. So if they're interviewing you, they're interested in that question. And so this is just a way to position yourself, to do well, regardless of where you're interviewing with. And then commitment is important. So people need to believe that you're really gung ho and you're going to stick around, and that's going to be something that's important. So if you have moves on your resume, you need to make the law firm believe that this is exactly what you want to, exactly where you want to be. This is kind of the accumulation of everything you've done in your career that makes you want to stay there, and this is what you want, and that makes them believe that you'll commit, which is very important because it costs firms a lot of money when people leave or don't work out. It can hurt their morale, it can hurt their business, and so they want to know that you'll commit. The big thing that a lot of people make a mistake with is they go into interviews and they express doubts. So when you go into any interview with a firm, you can't express any doubts. Your goal is always to get to the next interview. So this is where a substantial number of people blow their interviews. They go in and they'll express things about maybe wanting to do things their way, which would be working remotely. They'll ask questions about the billable hours requirements. And that will show that maybe they won't do things the way they want. They'll ask questions about weekends. They'll ask questions that make it seem like they're not going to just follow orders and do what's asked of them. And this applies to law firms hiring partners and associates. So they want people that are essentially going to fall in line and be managed, no different than any type of military organization or anything. They need people that can be managed. And typically, when you're an associate, you are a soldier, meaning you're just doing whatever's asked of you. And when you're a partner, you become more of a general, but you still need to do the things that law firms want. So when you're a partner, I mean, they may be evaluating you according to 25 or 60 different metrics, meaning your compensation may be set based on how well you did giving presentations, how well you did whatever. I mean, helping the firm with articles or something. I mean, so different people are managed in different ways, but anytime you express any doubts about being managed, law firms don't like that because they need people that are going to do what they want and that aren't going to question things. So anytime you question things or look like you can't be managed, law firms will think that maybe this person's trouble, and they will often back away. Now, it's not always the case, but more often than not, that's the case. So you need to always get to the next interview, never express doubts about anything that the law firm's asking. I mean, they could be asking you questions that are insane, like, do you have problems staying up 2 nights in a row? I mean, they never would ask you that, but you just always need to go with the flow and just be like, yeah, I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine working weekends. It's perfectly fine. All these things. And they may ask you that travel is perfectly fine. Because your job really at that point is just to get the job. And then once you get the job, many times you can negotiate things if you want, but that's pretty much your goal is in the interviews to get to the next stage. And certainly if the law firm is just not what you want, I mean, you can say this just doesn't work for me, walk out of an interview. But in most cases, you need to come across that way. I had an interesting thing happen not too long ago. I had a guy that was a trust and estates attorney, not a trust and estates attorney, he was a trademark attorney at a very small firm in Las Vegas with like 3 or 4 attorneys, and he was doing trademark work and a few other things, but mainly trademark work. And I got him an interview at a firm in North Carolina doing trademark work. I don't know how I got him interested in North Carolina. I don't know why I was submitting him to firms in North Carolina, but I got him an interview there, and they had a screening interview, and they were just so excited about bringing him out, and and they had him do screening interviews with a couple of other people, and then and then he got to the interview, and he interviewed very well, and then on his last day there, he had a flight, and some people took him out to lunch, and he kept checking his phone all the time during conversations, and taking calls and things, and so that they didn't like that. I mean, they thought if he really wanted this job, he would be giving them their undivided attention. And so that made them feel, it basically took them from a position where they told me the day before this lunch that they were going to make an offer to not getting an offer. The attorney I told you about earlier in the presentation that asked about remote work after he got an offer of paying over $500,000 a year when he was currently making 180,000, asked about remote work, and they thought that was a sign of not being able to be managed. So, doing what the firm expects of you, taking, doing, whatever. I mean, sometimes people won't get bonuses as much as they want, and then they'll go into a law firm and tell them that they're looking because they didn't get a good bonus, and that's a sign of being managed. I mean, you have to kind of do what the firm wants. I saw one guy that went to University of Chicago and was working at Winston and Strawn in in Los Angeles, making very good money, and he became very upset and led this like revolt against the partners because they had made them park to save money in an open air lot across the street from the office instead of in the parking structure where there was valet parking and all these things that was part of the building. And so he was very upset about that. People that do things like make remarks to that. When I was a summer associate, I saw a guy that was like a fifth or sixth year that was leading the pro bono there, and then got up and criticized the partnership for not for people not doing more pro bono. And so it's like the lowest in the city and thing. That's a sign of being managed. People that take actions that are too independent inside of law firms, talking to reporters. I saw one guy lose his job for that. I mean, just anything that suggests you're not manageable, that they pick up in an interview, they won't hire you. And so just realizing that whatever you're doing, if you're working for other people that are paying you, you need to be managed. And then, and these are kind of the additional two ones. The two, are, whether or not you want the job. So it's very common for like third or fourth year associates who may not be at the best firms and who may not have gone to the best law schools, but to have that experience, like walk into major firms and just be like, this is everything I've ever wanted. If you hire me, I'm going to, work so hard for you. I will be so grateful for this job. And the law firms will hire them because they want the job so much that that they prefer to hire them over like some other person from a large law firm that may be somewhat jaded, just feel like they deserve to work in a large law firm. These people get into law firms all the time. It's interesting. So, if you have experience in like some practice area that's pretty marketable, which is corporate and at different points in time, and you come in and you say that this is exactly what I'm looking for. I really, really want this job. Then they feel a real affinity to you and they feel good about themselves because someone really wants to work there and makes them feel good. If you walk into a firm and express any hesitation or don't act just completely fired up, like that's what you want, then the law firm will hire often someone who is. I mean, that's what you would want if you were hiring someone. If you were interviewing, a someone to maybe you had a I don't know, whatever business, or maybe you were hiring someone to take care of your kids. I mean, if someone came in and really, really wanted it and acted like they would do the things you asked, and another person came in and did the opposite, you would hire the person who looked like they'd be managed and really wanted it. So you have to appear like you really want the job, and then also being likable. So you're not likable if you don't look like you're manageable. You're not likable if you don't look like you want the job. You're not likable if you feel like you're just kind of going to take this job and see what happens, which a lot of people do. They say, well, I'll try this out, and if I don't like it, I'll leave. People don't like that. They want to like you. So anything that shows that you're going to work really hard, that you're going to do what's asked of you, that you're going to and sort of those things, and then build a connection with your interviewers is very important. Sometimes you can connect with them about things like schools or neighborhoods you grew up in or sports you played, but getting some sort of connection to the interviewers is very important. I saw during, and I've told this story before, but there was absolutely no corporate positions available in the entire United States after the .com explosion, or where everything went to hell in 2001, and it was actually started in November. And what had happened is all these people had way over capacity of corporate attorneys, and then just tens of thousands of them were fired because there was no more work, and all the work was coming from these .com companies, and so there were no jobs, and there was one job in Denver at Morrison and Forrester, and they must have received thousands of applications. And the guy that was hired was someone that had been a competitive snowboarder, like the partner that had a job. That was a connection. So people will like you based on those sort of connections. Those can be often based along racial lines, religious lines, all sorts of different things where there's a connection. But if you have that connection, people are going to like you more. And connection is actually different. And I'll just make this final point. When you're talking to associates versus partners, partners are going to always want the people who are going to work the hardest and try the hardest and compete with other associates to be the best. So that's kind of what you need to come across with when you're interviewing with partners, while still seeming like you're going to get along with other associates. And then associates really that are interviewing you don't want people that are going to make them look bad, or that they think are not going to socialize with them, or whatever that is. So you need to tailor your interviews differently for each of them. And then anytime you ask a question, it can't be about benefits. It can't be about anything related to the answers the law firm may not like to have to even answer, because they feel that that's more important. So anything you do that doesn't talk about actually doing the job and doing it well is going to get you in trouble. So you ask questions like, what would success look like in the first 30, 60, 90 days? What did people that you hired past, or what are the people that are here doing the best? What are they doing to succeed? And so, asking these kind of questions makes you look like you're eager for the job. It makes you look like you want to do well. And so this is kind of what people do that do well. So I will send you, everyone that's on this webinar registered, I'll send you a copy of this guide just so you have it. It should help you with your interviews in the future. And it also explains kind of what law firms are looking for when they're hiring lateral attorneys, to work for them. And if you do those things well, then that's going to really position you well. And the whole society of the United States is built on advancing people that that wouldn't be advanced in other parts of the country or world. So, historically, people left in places like France and England because they had social structures that would never enable them to advance professionally. It's still that way in places like France to a great extent. But people want to advance people that want to try hard and do well. And people typically move from the East Coast to the West Coast in California because they weren't doing well in that environment, and they wanted to put themselves in an environment where they thought they could do well. So you need to kind of learn that in order to position yourself well in interviews. I hope that was helpful. I mean, that was a really good question as well. Okay. And thanks for everybody for asking all those questions. Questions are just really good. So This is very helpful for everyone. If I didn't attend a top law school or secure prestigious clerkships, but have since built a strong track record in practice, how can I best position myself for opportunities in firms that typically favor candidates with elite pedigrees? Okay, so there's a couple different ways. So I'll just kind of give you a couple of examples here of how things work. So I don't know what city you're in, but say you're in Cleveland. So you're in Cleveland. So Cleveland and doing real estate law. So after new law school graduates coming out doing real estate law in Cleveland. I don't know what the number is. Let's say it's 100. That's probably actually that's way high. Let's say it's 75. After 2 years, it may be 65. After 3, maybe 50. After 4, it may be 30. And after 5, it may be 15 or 20. After 6, it's going to be maybe 15. And after 7, it's going to be 10. And after 10, it may be 2 or maybe 4. Let's just say. So this is what happens to attorneys that go in Cleveland. So this is what happens to attorneys that graduate from law school in Cleveland and go to work law firms in Cleveland, big and small. After the first year they graduate, 75 may be hired, but after 5 years, there's only going to be 20 left in that practice area. So obviously you have an issue of supply and demand because these attorneys here are actually very marketable because they know what they're doing. And actually it would be this too. I'm not going to explain all the reasons why, but you're marketable as a mid-level. So the more you practice, the more marketable you're going to be because there's fewer people that you're competing with for the same position. So if your firm's looking for a 6-year attorney, only out of those 15 people, maybe only 2 are looking at any point in time. So that means 2 Cleveland attorneys looking for real estate jobs. Now, that may be underestimated, but you can get the idea. But there's going to be less competition the longer you play this game of staying in a law firm, which most people don't understand. So because again, 15 attorneys that do real estate law, 6-year attorneys, maybe only 2 of those people are looking for jobs. And so if an employer is looking for someone based in Cleveland that's around 6-year or whatever, they're not going to have a lot of options, right? Through looking for jobs. Maybe they'll also look at 5th years too for a 6-year. But there's just not a lot of people like as you get more senior competing for the same jobs. So these 75, these 65, maybe out of those 65, people tend to look for jobs quite early. So maybe 15 are looking for jobs, and the odds are they're going to have better qualifications than you. So they'll have better qualifications. So all that means is, it's going to be very hard for you to get a job based on your law school and so forth. After, your 2nd year, it's going to be difficult after your 3rd year. But as you get more senior, all these people will have dropped out of the practice of law, or they've gone in-house, and they've left the city of Cleveland, whatever it is. And some new people may come in, but there's just less competition for jobs. And so people that didn't go to the best schools, if you're still practicing law, then you're going to have much less competition. So I hope these numbers make sense, because this is why the longer you continue to play the game, the better jobs you can get. So you can get better jobs as a 5th year because there's going to be 3 people looking than you would get as a 2nd year or a 1st year or whatever. This is all based mainly in muscular phase. So that's one of the things. And then the other thing is in order to position yourself for more opportunities that can traditionally favor candidates with elite pedigrees, the other thing you would do is you would, make sure you are working on the largest clients possible, and getting experience with that, hopefully in a narrowly a narrowly defined practice area. So what does that mean? Defined practice area. So if you were doing real estate, um, you would want to do, you would want to do commercial transactions as opposed to residential sales, residential sales. And then you would want to, if you did only leasing for big companies, for big clients, that would be better than, doing all different types of real estate. So possibly, just because there's going to be less competition. So like how many real estate attorneys, are you going to be doing company real estate leasing? So I'm just kind of showing you how to position yourself. So if you're doing nothing but real estate leasing, and these numbers are going to be quite different. It's going to be more like 15, 8, 10, or let's say 12, 6, 3, 1, 2, 1. So then suddenly, there's less competition, just you. So this is just how it works. So the better your specialty, and if you're doing large companies opposed to larger companies, and the more refined your specialty is, the better off you're going to be in the long run, because there's no competition. So if you were a real estate leasing attorney and you're in your 5th year and you've been working for large companies, then doing real estate leasing, then as a 5th year, you could suddenly find yourself in Jones Day or something. Which is a big Cleveland firm. So that's just kind of how it works. The more time you get in a practice area, as long as it's the firm, practice area that does work for companies as opposed to individuals, and the larger the clients you work for, the better off you're going to be in the long run in terms of your ability to get jobs, regardless of the practice area that you're currently in. I hope that makes sense. Regardless of where you went to law school. Now, there's some exceptions to that. If you went to an accredited law school and didn't do well, if you went to a very low-ranked law school and weren't able to get a job working for large clients, you're going to have a hard time. But you can always move up. And what a lot of people do is they might start out their career doing residential real estate, for example, which is consumer facing. And they may move to a firm, their 2nd year, where they're going to get to work for companies. And then the 4th year, they may move to a firm that will larger companies. And then pretty soon they're positioned to potentially get a job in those firms. Now, there are some law firms that just don't hire people from not top law schools, and that doesn't really matter. You can still get jobs with firms that don't care as much. And so I wouldn't worry too much about that, but you just position yourself in those markets where you can do the best. And then to get really far out, you can even go to states and cities without people like you. So that's another way where you can get into good firms, maybe not the best firms like AmLaw 100 firms, but you can always often move up by moving to smaller markets where there's fewer attorneys, because obviously Cleveland is a large market. But if you were to move to Findlay, Ohio or something, which is a smaller market, you would be able to get access to that type of work. So if you couldn't get access to working on big clients or large clients in Cleveland, you could always move to states and cities around Ohio, for example, or other states where there's fewer attorneys, and you can get that work. And so when you look at the pedigrees of people in Macon, Georgia, or whatever, or different smaller markets, they're doing work for companies, and the qualifications of the attorneys aren't as good. So getting that type of experience can be very helpful. So I hope that's helpful. That was kind of a long-winded answer, but I'm just trying to show everyone that your staying power in a practice area and then working for firms that do company-facing work can be really helpful. Okay, so what happens when an overachiever's personality clashes with the firm's culture, such as in the more traditional or slow-moving environment? If I find myself in a firm that does not reward my driving initiative, how should I assess whether to push for change internally or seek with a firm that better aligns with my personality? Yeah. So, I mean, people move firms like this for this reason all the time. They may want a faster paced environment, or work in a firm with more high achievers like them, and where there's other people that they can compete with. If you are at a firm where the pace is really slow and not much is going on, that's going to affect your development as an attorney. So you certainly do not want to be at firms like that if you have that sort of personality, because it's going to lower, the bar for you. So, I guess this is an example that Tony Robbins once told me about, and I thought it was very interesting. Temperature is like the temperature of a room. So, and this is just, it's an example for people. But if some people, 80%, productivity is productivity, that's 80%, meaning you're doing a really good job. Someone with 20% productivity, someone productivity. If that person with, or, I would just, I don't know if productivity is the right word, but it would be being, 20% productivity. So if a person with like a 20% productivity um, role moves into something that requires 80% productivity, that person will generally get fired, or they will, they'll sabotage their career. They won't be comfortable. And so then they will automatically just kind of push themselves right back down to the 20% productivity. But the problem is if you're someone that can do 80% productivity and you're with a group that's only doing 20% productivity, then obviously that's going to be dragging you down because you're capable of 80% productivity. So your objective needs to be to push yourself into an environment where people are more productive and like you, and to move up. And people move up all the time, but you have to have a lot of enthusiasm and drive like you have. And you have to interview with firms. I mean, if you interview with a firm and you tell them that things are too slow at my firm, people don't bill a lot of hours, I don't feel like I'm getting good enough experience, they will love that. They will be very enthusiastic and like that. Also, high achievers will put things on their resume like, highest biller of associates. Then they'll say, sort of 2024. Well, let's say 2020, 2024, or it'll be 2021, 2021, 2022, et cetera, up until, 2025. And then, and they will put that on their resume. And that looks really good. And it looks, really good to the law firms that someone, was the highest biller in the firm. I mean, maybe the highest biller was 1800s, you can say that, but saying something like that in your resume is going to really impress people that way. So you should try to get out of a slow moving environment, because a slow moving environment is essentially pushing you down. The reason, by the way, that people try to go to the best schools, it's almost like, I mean, it's for prestige and all sorts of other reasons. But when you go to the best schools, you're going to be pushed to the levels of achievement and things that those people, want. So an example, like my daughter, just got into like the University of Chicago early decision, and I would say she's in a class of 100, and like another 15 of those people have already got into like, really good Ivy League schools like, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, things like that, early decision. So, but my youngest daughter, she goes to Malibu High, and it's like the exact opposite. Like, maybe, one person from her class last year got into USC, which is the most competitive school. Maybe someone hasn't gotten into like an Ivy League school there in 30 years or 15 or whatever. So, but it's not maybe that those kids at Malibu High are not all as smart. It's just that the environment there is emphasizing things like being, a musician or a model or a actress or whatever, or into some sort of sales types. Even those are the kind of people that she's around. So the type of people that you're around in the schools you go to, and and the firms you get into are going to impact what happens to your future. And it's just crazy that, I mean, you can look at schools and even say the same thing. So that's kind of interesting. I was in college. I think I told the story earlier in his presentation, but that there was another guy I knew that I talked about that committed suicide, and he was from a small town in Oklahoma and had been valedictorian of his class and all these things, but um, was not had not grown up in as competitive an environment. And so maybe he was operating at like 20%. He got to the University of Chicago where everyone was at 80% and started failing all his classes and very rapidly pushed himself down to this 20% productivity by suddenly starting to drink and by consciously, not doing as well as he was capable of getting in some legal problems where his girlfriend got a domestic violence restraining order. I mean, all these things. So this guy, instead of rising to that level of productivity, just pushed himself down back to that level. So sometimes people can be taken out of one role and put into another, and they fail. And so it's important, to kind of understand that dynamic. But yeah, if you're at a place where it's 20% productivity, it's going to harm you, and you should try to get into the best environment possible as fast as possible. Okay, if an attorney as a firm does not seem to recognize and reward their contributions, what is the best way to achieve the overachiever nature to create external opportunities? Okay, so you need to realize, and everyone on the call, this is actually extremely important. What I'm telling you now could change the direction of your career. So there are firms, many of them, that just look at a associate is kind of this fungible tool that's never going to advance. That doesn't, that there's that it's just going to do work where they can find another one if they leave, and does not really care one way or another. Like they feel they can bring in bodies all day long, and they just don't care. So there are firms that do insurance defense, like large ones, I think that way. There are firms where, they're just not going to, they don't care. And I was talking to a partner a couple of months ago at a firm that he was seeking to, merge into another one. And he was basically saying, I don't care about any associates here, but just hire new ones in the new firm. It's, it doesn't matter. It's all of us with this business are going to move to a new firm. So that's something just to be aware of, that there are firms like that. And if you're in a firm like that and you're overachieving, then you need to try to move to a better firm as quickly as you can, where there's other people like you. Because if you're surrounded with a firm that's going to recognize your contributions and appreciate it, then that will create external opportunities for you. So that's important. But a firm where there's people that will recognize and reward you and advance you and things are what you should find. And you can always find those firms. You just need to look at enough opportunities to find them. But a lot of firms are just a fungible tool for them, a profit-making thing that if you stick around, great. If you don't, there's plenty of people that can replace you. So that's very scary. And getting into a firm that does that. A lot of times people, I was talking to another firm that was seeking to merge yesterday, and that firm, the guy that had worked there had every associate that ever had joined him had become a partner. They were making pretty good money. It was in New York City. I mean, he was paying them, I think, between $500,000 and $700,000 a year, and it was like a very small firm of like maybe 6 people or something. And so that would be an example of someone finding a firm that was going to recognize their contributions, make them partner, or there was a history of that, and that was a good thing. And there are firms in smaller markets that are like that. Like if you join them as an associate, they will always make you a partner of some sort and do that. Or if you go to major law firms and you bill an incredible number of hours, they will give you big bonuses and things. So, so you can always find a firm that does that, but you have to, many times you have to look at a lot more places than than you normally would in order to get that. So it's just a question. And one of the reasons I just bring up this point about always being in the job market is, people get into a job and they think, oh, there's this, sense of loyalty I have to demonstrate there in order to, and I never should be looking for a position unless I really have to. Most of the time when people start looking for a position, they may have lost their job and given 3 months to work, or fired from a job, or whatever. But you should always be, if there are things about your current job that you think could be better, there's nothing wrong with constantly applying to law firms and job openings that you find. First of all, it's not going to get back to your firm, but second of all, law firms do not destroy people's confidentiality. That would be, once they did that with one attorney, 100 attorneys might find out, so they don't. But you always need to be looking at jobs because this person up here, is at a firm that doesn't do that. So they need to find another place. And an attorney that's always looking for jobs could suddenly find a firm that totally matches them culturally, all sorts of other ways, work style that they wouldn't have, realized had they not gone on an interview. Okay, given the firms highly prioritize academic credentials and law school rankings, how can an attorney who is labeled as an underachiever early in life overcome this bias when looking for legal positions? Well, if you, were at a firm, if you're labeled as an underachiever, you can always, whatever that bias is, you can always overcome it. People are only looking at you when you're young, they're looking at you based on your current motivation, not something, that was there in the past. And, maybe you're talking about early in your career. So, people catch fire and do well at different points in time. So, the most important thing is you need to have an obsession with whatever it is you're doing, and that will come through. So what does an obsession mean? It means, working very, very hard. It means, showing a real commitment to the practice area. It means doing things that other people aren't doing wherever you're at that are very strong, and just showing, just a real commitment and drive to wherever you are, and then continually trying to move to better and better firms with better and better clients. Great questions, everyone. Thank you. Okay, one of the key traits of overachievers is their ability to set and achieve ambitious goals, but sometimes this leads to fixation on external validation, such as making partners as quickly as possible. In your experience, how can attorneys achieve meaningful success rather than checking off milestones imposed by their firm or careers? Okay, so you're talking about people achieving things by setting goals, fixation, external validation, and how does that ensure they're pursuing meaningful success rather than checking off milestones imposed by them? Well, I think what meaningful success is means a lot to different types of people. So it can be working on different types of matters. Sometimes people's success is their ability to raise a good family, or have a good relationship with their spouse, or to have time for other things. Sometimes attorneys will work on things that they like in the background, or sometimes attorneys will walk away from large law firm practice and represent different types of groups of people that may be having issues. So, people do fall into this pattern. And then when they do become partner, then they're suddenly even more competitive because they need to generate business and build the most hours of their partners and everything. So it's just kind of an endless cycle. So, that's why I talked about earlier, like a lot of very talented people that look like they'd be talented in the legal profession end up going into and doing other things because they feel like they can have more meaningful success. And the idea of the Yale Law School graduates just all going into various forms of government, public service, and academics rather than working in these firms. It's almost as if, the importance of the law firms and that being success is confined mainly. You don't see a lot of people from NYU doing public service. You don't see a lot of people from Columbia. They all are kind of pressured at those schools to go into big law firms. You see most of that when you're looking at places like, to a lesser extent, a greater extent, Yale. I don't know what's going on here. A greater extent, like places like Yale, than you would at lower ranked law schools where that's important. So you just need to do something that makes you happy. And it doesn't have to be working in a law firm, because it does get pretty exhausting for partners in large law firms and even mid-sized law firms, just trying to succeed under their different metrics and stuff. It can be, just very difficult over time. And if you don't enjoy it, then you shouldn't do it. Actually, I shouldn't say if you don't enjoy it, you shouldn't do it, because a lot of people don't enjoy it to some extent. They want the economic success. Okay, what questions should one ask in an interview to gauge what level of productivity they can expect from the firm? So firms will generally offer letters. You typically don't want to ask that in the interview because that would be something that would express doubts. So a lot of times in the offer letters, they will basically say how many hours that they expect, and so that would be one way to learn it. But asking questions about what of your best associates do, what would it take to be the best associate, and a lot of times if you ask them that question, they'll talk about hours, and that will give you a sense of that level of productivity. But you can pretty much be guaranteed that if you're interviewing with AmLaw, 100 to 200 law firm, or any law firm that services big clients, they're going to expect quite a high level of productivity. There are lots of boutiques in every large city. There are over 1,000 of them where people have broken off from large law firms, and because they didn't like having to work so many hours, and they want to have a more balanced lifestyle, and they felt that the only way they could do that would be having a smaller firm. And so you can find those firms if you do enough research. If you do a research for corporate law boutiques in New York City, you'll certainly find hundreds of them, and you could try to apply to those types of firms. And then sometimes you'll get in there right away and we'll talk about how it's a great place to work because they don't have their hour requirements aren't so high and so forth. And that is one way you'll find out. So generally, if law firm doesn't require a lot of hours and so forth, they will actually come out and tell you in the interview. So that's one way to learn about it. You can ask associates many times, like, what are the hours like? And they will tell you in the interview. And then, when they say that, just don't express any doubts. That'll give you a good way of learning about that. Okay, let's see. As a law firm associate attorney, I've struggled to maintain adequate assignments to make billables despite regularly requesting additional work. My annual review was excellent when compared to peers. I'm certainly productive. Any tips? So yeah, this is a good question. And there's a couple different answers to it. So, to get adequate assignments to make billables despite requesting additional work, when you're at I don't know if you're at a large law firm or small law firm, but this is just kind of a heads up for anyone that's at a large law firm. Most large law firms, their clients will pay to have the work done as well as possible. So that may be, if you're writing a brief, that may be doing a lot of additional research. If you're, working on some corporate thing, and maybe working extra hours to make sure it's perfect. So a lot of people in law firms is just kind of a wake-up call, but I mean, it should be no question or no surprise. Will work as hard and as much detail on assignments as they can, which will give them plenty of billable hours. And it's up to the law firm partners to decide if they want to write off the work, which they often do. So, but you just need to understand that in order to make your billables, you often need to work a lot of hours. To get work, it's always important to network in whatever firm you're in. To request work from people, to meet them at firm events and talk to them and tell them they'd love to work for them. And typically the best associates in any law firm are very busy because they're getting repeat work from partners. They're able to track down work and get things done. And they're able to actually work a lot of hours on different assignments. It's up to the firm whether or not they want to write off your work. So if you were to work on an assignment that took you 100 hours and you were able to make that piece of work much better by working an additional 100 hours, then that's good work as long as you meet deadlines. And it's up to the firm to decide whether or not they want to write it off. And so that's not your decision, but you're billing hours. So that's one of the recommendations I would give. You do the best job you possibly can. And if the law firm wants to write it off, that's their problem, not yours. Generally, they won't write it off. I mean, to be honest with you, because the largest clients want the best possible work done. I'm not telling you to overbill if you don't have, I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm telling you that if you're representing some giant corporation like General Motors, and it costs them $20,000, you work an extra 50 hours and it costs them 30 or 40,000, but you give them a much better product that could result in them saving hundreds of thousands or millions or making millions, then you're not really doing anything wrong. You're just doing a better job and giving a little, better product. So that's one of the things that I would say, and then, but yeah, always requesting additional work, doing the best you can, the work you have, and then networking with other attorneys to try to get additional work. Okay, this is a good question, another one. So I was just reading it here pretty closely. Okay, this question is, how can I differentiate between persistence and knowing to pivot my legal career? I understand that successful attorneys are not trying, but I've been struggling to find a position in my practice area for over a year. Should I consider switching specialties or moving to different types of work, different work? Okay, so there are certain practice areas where there's not a lot of opportunity, and that could be in your market, or it could be just nationally. Like nationally, there's typically not a lot of jobs for trademark attorneys and different practice areas. There's not a lot of jobs for FDA attorneys. There's not a lot of jobs for different practice areas. Just not international arbitration, things like that. And so yes, if there are not a lot of jobs in your practice area wherever you are, or you're not getting jobs there, then you're often going to be better off looking at other markets. But at the same time, like I showed you earlier, in every market, there's hundreds of, every state, there's hundreds of cities. And in each of those cities, there's, people that may be doing work in your practice area that don't have jobs. So you should apply to them. So I don't think that anybody ever has to switch practice areas unless they're just totally committed to living one place. But even if you're committed to that one place, you can almost always find attorneys that will need work. And so that just means applying to places and submitting your resume to places that don't have openings. And just to be clear, say you're in Los Angeles and for whatever reason, you couldn't find a job doing corporate law, you should be able to without any problem by approaching boutiques and everything. But say you couldn't, and you suddenly decided you wanted to start applying to firms in Fresno, and you were, there are no people don't want to work in Fresno. So you would be the first applicant they'd received unsolicited, probably in a very long time. And so if they had work, they would hire you. So anybody can get a job in any practice area. You just need to look at more markets or look deeper in your own market, which means doing a search for people that do that and then finding people that do that kind of work and applying there. Sometimes, when you're in a practice area, like if you're in, like municipal finance, and you're trying to get a job in Los Angeles, and you might sit around for 6 months before you see a job opening. Now that practice area is probably not an accurate one for Los Angeles, but I think you get the idea. So no, you never need to consider switching specialties, but you could consider moving to a different market, but you also need to consider, how difficult each job is. So, if there's 25 jobs, in your market, and each of those gets, 50 applications, over the year, you're not the best, so don't get the job. So why would you just be applying to 25 jobs when there's maybe 750 attorneys, at small to mid-sized firms that do the kind of work you do in your market. You do at I'm just 750 law firms work you do, right? So that's, if you apply that gives you 750 places to apply. And not only that, but in the entire state, there's 100 cities, and maybe that number becomes 4,000. So there's plenty of applications, or places you can apply. It's just people just give up and don't think about this. This is a very important rule that should govern anyone's career. It can change the direction of your life. It can make you employed or not employed. It can boost your self-esteem. It can do all sorts of things for you. But people don't do this. And, why would you, if you were representing someone and they were your client, and you're their attorney, you would tell them, and we're going to do these and hope for the best by applying to these firms. I mean, that's not the kind of representation you would want. You would want someone that says, well, in addition to these 25 jobs, we have 750 places you can apply to, and there's 100 cities, so there's 4,000 places. Why are you giving up when you didn't qualify for these 25? Because there's literally almost 200 times more opportunities in these 25. And the other thing is, when you apply to firms without openings, they're flattered and they think it's great. And so if they have the work, they'll talk to you. So that's, basically the rules. So, when you're an attorney looking for a job, you're representing yourself. Why wouldn't you do the best job possible for yourself as opposed to the way you would think about it if you're a really good attorney representing someone else? All great questions, by the way. Each of these questions is really helping a lot of people. So thank you, everyone who's asked. What are they looking for when they do phone screenings, interviews? What are they looking for to push you to the next interview? If you had one that lasted 6 minutes, what would that mean? Also, does the way you sound matter? Let's say you sound like a gangster because you were a college football player and hung out with those dudes your whole life, or super country because that's how you grow up. Do you just learn to change how you sound? Yeah. So a couple of things. So, if you have an interview that lasts 6 minutes, a couple of things could have happened. The law firm may not have looked at your resume closely, and the person looking at your resume may not like it all of a sudden, think this person's a bad fit. So I had one example where I had an attorney that was fired from a law firm because he didn't respond quickly enough when this woman partner sent out assignments that people could claim each Monday at 8 a.m. And he's like, I'm not going to come in at 8 a.m. to look at assignments. That's not what I'm here for, to beg for work. And he'd gone to NYU, and this was a big firm. So he lost his job and he was unemployed. And so I managed to get him an interview at a big firm. I don't want to say the name, just don't want them to get mad at me. But he walked in, and it was supposed to be like a full day of interviews because the firm really needed someone. And he was prepared to go there and have some interviews in the morning, go out to lunch and come back and do some more interviews. He got into his first interview, and the guy he was interviewing first, his partner took one look at his resume and said, I didn't realize you were unemployed. This is not, we can't, I'm sorry, but you're not someone we can hire. And that was an example of an interview that maybe went 3 minutes. So there can be all sorts of reasons that law firms will reject you. Sometimes they may not like your appearance. I mean, I had one guy that wasn't getting jobs and I couldn't figure out why. And then I did a Zoom call with him, and he was sitting in his kitchen, and behind him there were all these sorry, I'm just thinking here, there were all these dishes that didn't look like they've been washed in weeks, and boxes of cereal like half turned over and things. And so that was why he wasn't getting interviews in his getting follow-up interviews. So something wrong with his appearance. Other people will just not dress right for the interview. They'll wear a t-shirt or something. So there's all sorts of reasons that law firms could reject you in a Zoom interview. Essentially what they're looking for when they try to interviews, they're looking for whether or not you seem like you want to work there, whether or not you, in terms of the way you look, you fit their, you fit their profile. And that just, I don't know what that could be, but, you have to dress up for your interviews. You have to be well-groomed. You have to, seem enthusiastic. You have to look eager to work there. You have to look like pretty much the type of person that a client would want to hire. So think about that. So clients will hire a certain type of attorney. So if you don't look like the type of attorney that a law firm's client would hire, then that's a problem. So, you have to think about that. I had one guy that was first in his class from good school in California. He got a job in a major firm, and then he grew his hair down to his waist, and was having a possible time getting callbacks because law firms saw that and they didn't like it. Or he put his hair in a ponytail so they couldn't, it's just, there's certain things that law firms like and don't like. That was something that turned law firms off. So you just have to consider, is there anything in your background that's making law firms think that you wouldn't look good and presentable to a client? Think about that. The other thing you're talking about is sounding country or sounding like a gangster, because that's how you grew up. Most people that put themselves in environments where other people are talking a certain way, they'll outgrow that. So, you take someone with a huge Texas accent and put them in New York for 6 months and they stop talking that way. Or they'll start saying things like y'all just to be kind of endearing and do it for fun. But people talk like the people that they work around. So, if you hung around football players or you grew up in the country, I mean, it's not something that is, typically going to be, used against you too much, but you have to think, is that the type of speech that a client will want to hear? So, how you talk, how you present yourself, all those sorts of things, matter, and, I mean, immigrants come over here all the time and they sound perfect. I mean, I talked to a woman earlier this week, like on Monday, who was from China and, came over and got a law degree, and she sounds perfect grammar, like just normal, any normal American. I mean, how long did that take? 3 years? I mean, it's incredible. So most people can, learn, the accents and things. When people go to Texas, start talking like Texans. I mean, it could be from New York City. I mean, it's just, it doesn't, that's typically how that works. But you do need to uh, just put yourself in the position of a law firm trying to hire people that would be similar to their clients. Let's see, or that would be presentable to their clients. And there's plenty of people that talk in big different types of accents and do just fine. I had a candidate the other day that did sound like a gangster. It was kind of funny, but he'd been at a big law firm for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. And, he didn't sound like a gangster completely, but he started, using terms, that were kind of vernacular, I guess, would be, and I didn't have any issues with it. And obviously, big law firms didn't have any issues with it. So I don't think that's really too much to worry about. But you should, in terms of jobs. Okay, how long? And I had a candidate once from Texas that he was like deep Texas. He was in like West Texas, like Midland or something, and he had this incredibly, like crazy, like Texas accent, and he got a job at a big firm in um, Philadelphia, and I mean, just cares. But how long do you recommend staying at a small boutique firm? I've worked at the same firm since passing the bar, and I'm starting my fourth year of a practice here in corporate securities law um, in corporate securities in Los Angeles. That's great. So getting experience in corporate securities law is a practice area that is very marketable. You can start on a small firm, you can go to a big firm. The reason being there's not a lot of securities attorneys. That's especially true when there's IPOs and some other things happening. So that's great. I would, if I was at a small boutique firm and I was doing their practice area, I would be applying to every large firm opening that came up doing securities law. That's what I would do because that's the only way, you're going to get a job. So just every opening that comes up, apply to it and probably eventually you'll get something. That practice area is very economically dependent. So that means that it's going to be dependent on the economy, your ability to get a job. So if the economy's hot, I mean, you could literally move from Los Angeles to New York or move from Los Angeles to Palo Alto. And you might get, Palo Alto does a lot more and, San Francisco does a lot more of that kind of work than Los Angeles. I mean, so you could sit around Los Angeles and apply to 5 jobs and nothing happens or wait, a while to get a job, or you could apply in Palo Alto and get like, multiple jobs at big firms. So it's a great practice area. Typically with that practice area, you want to be in markets where there's a lot of that work being done. So LA is not as good as the Bay Area. There's just a lot more of that work. So if I was a securities law attorney, I would try to work there because there's going to be more opportunities both in law firms and then in-house. If that's what you try to do, later on. But sorry, give me a second. Cancel. Okay. Yeah, and thanks everyone for these great questions. Just amazing. Okay. If I have an employment gap from a boss who didn't pay his employees' salaries, how should I approach job applications? I've tried to address it in cover letters without being too negative, but I'm still not getting interviews. Yeah, so I don't know what practice area you're in. That's certainly a good way to uh, to interview. I mean, a good thing, reason to look for a job. Oh my gosh, I guess my advice to you would be to, employment gap matters more in different types of law firms and others. So it's going to matter more in the highest paying law firms where there's the most competition, meaning, law firms that have their pick of who they can hire. So they're going to hire someone most times it's employed rather than unemployed. So that's one thing. But in terms of smaller law firms, typically, if they don't pay a lot, and I'm assuming that might have been the position you're in. If they don't pay a lot of money, then they're not going to get as many applicants. So you should be able to get interviews despite that. I would try to not put that in your cover letter and let them ask you that in an interview. And if they ask you that in an interview, then you can talk about it. If the law firm laid off all its associates and partners and he was the only person, you might even want to put that on your resume somewhere. You could address it, but I don't think a gap is going to matter too much in whatever practice area you're in, because that would be very rare for for a law firm that's doing practice areas, related to companies for that to happen. I don't know, but yeah, I would take it off your cover letter. I would make your cover letter very short. Cover letters don't really need to say very much, except I'm interested in working for your firm. I would appreciate the opportunity to work for you. I'm familiar with. I mean, it's really all a cover letter needs to say, and then your resume should speak for itself. So I would take a look at your resume and maybe how your resume is. Is your resume focused on your practice area? Does it kind of go all over the place? And try to make your resume focused on whatever practice area you're trying to apply for jobs in. And if you do that well, I think you'll end up getting more interviews. But typically, the key to getting more interviews is just applying to more places. And if there's not enough openings, then you create a market by applying to people in law firms without openings, and hoping that they hire you, which I've talked about several times today. That's really works really well. This next question. So next question is, what strategies you recommend for balancing the need to excel with maintaining long-term career sustainability and demanding long-term environment? How can an attorney demonstrate ambition without falling into the trap of overworking to the point of diminishing returns? So law firms will put people into counsel positions that don't have the drive, or business to be partners, and those people will often not be expected to work as many hours. So that's one thing you can do is you can look forward to being a counsel position. If you don't want to remain in a large law firm because it's too taxing for you, which is definitely the case for a lot of people, then you can find another employer. Law firms are very sympathetic to women that have children and want to work reduced hours. So if you have children and you go to them and you say, would it be possible for me to make sort of agreement where I work a few hours? They typically more often than do that. If you're a mother, and then if you want to have career sustainability, a lot of times it means going into another practice setting, which actually isn't going to give you sustainability actually in-house, but just trying to find firms that may not be as demanding. And the other thing that I remember one partner was saying to me that got him through all this is, no one's ever going to protect your time like in a law firm. Like if they see you working all the time, they don't care. I mean, they like it, and no one's going to tell you you're working too hard because that's how they make money. So, making sure you're carving out time for yourself, and then maybe not working as extreme hours, but doing good work, and hopefully something good happens with that. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason for someone to stay in a large law firm if they don't like that, and if it's too taxing for them. It's just not worth it, and you should get out, because especially if you're like an overachiever and it's hurting you. Okay, question: if I start my career at a small law firm, where it would be ideal, would it be ideal to try to lateral to a mid-sized firm? Also, would it be possible to switch practice areas? The small firm only practices real estate trust in states, but I also have over transactional practice. I'm not sure how to access large economies and complex matters in small law firm. Okay, so generally, to transition to a mid-sized firm from a small firm, your resume should try to talk about one practice area that you do. So If you do real estate, it would talk about real estate. If you do trust and estates, it would talk about trust and estates. If you've done any transactional corporate related practice here, then that would be what you'd want to list on your resume if you're trying to do corporate related. To switch practice areas is very difficult because it doesn't matter. I don't know how much experience you have, but when a law firm has a job opening, they're typically hiring someone that has experience in that practice area. So that's one reason, like your practice area that you start out in, it's important to try to, stay in that practice area. So typically to lateral to a mid-sized firm, you would have to be doing something already in that practice area. So the only possible way that you could be to lateral, if you wanted to practice areas, might be to a smaller firm that does that and where you're one of the only applicants. But you just have to understand, like if a law firm has an opening, they're going to hire someone doing that practice area. They're not going to hire someone that wants to transition practice areas. Transitioning practice areas is very difficult. The reason being that, law firms will hire people that do that practice area. Why would they hire someone in another practice area? So that can make it pretty difficult. So you typically will have to go sideways or even down to a smaller law firm that's likely to hire you in that practice area. I've seen people move to small cities where they can get that experience from large markets. I've seen people do all sorts of things. You start beefing up your resume to look like you're interested in corporate by putting all sorts of associations on there, maybe I don't know, other things you could do, but it's very difficult to do that. But if you go to a smaller law firm that doesn't get a lot of applicants and is willing to train you, then that's good. People often will meet people, and those people will help them transition into that practice area. Like they'll just meet random people at events and things. But, moving to a larger firm, if you want to do that, I guess what I would recommend would be to beef up your real estate resume, because real estate attorneys work for companies and not individuals. So I'd beef up my real estate resume. Then I would try to apply to larger firms. And then when I got the larger firms, I would happily do the real estate work because you're working for companies and you're looking to make more money. I would do the real estate work, and then I would try to ask partners and things at the mid-sized firm if they could give you some corporate work, like you'd like to do some of that too. And you'd have to do that without pissing off the people you're working with in real estate, but that's another way to do it. Okay, well, thank you everyone for being on the webinar. I think this was really good material, and I think hopefully you learned a lot. There's one other question that I didn't answer. I apologize. That how do I maintain productivity while facing repeated rejections from job search? If you're facing a lot of rejections, you're just not applying to enough places, and you can't take it personally. Every time a firm rejects you, they're just rejecting you for business reasons. They think that they can get someone better, and so you need to find somewhere where you make business sense to them. It's not personal. It shouldn't have anything to do with your ego. Attorneys get rejected all the time. They get rejected by courts. They get rejected by clients. I mean, it's part of the thing. And so you need to learn, how not to involve your ego. All right. Well, thanks again for everyone for being on the call. And then we'll do one next week. I would like to do one about probably some of these job application strategies, but I'll think about it because a lot of people ask questions, but that could have helped. Then, yeah. And then I'll send everyone the interview guide that I mentioned on the call. And generally, if I can, I will, if you show up to these webinars, I will send you a free book or something that I've written, to help you just as kind of a reward for being here. So thanks again. I will see everyone next week.